Good evening, everyone. My name is Abigail Goodman, and I am the Consulting Curator for Rollins College and Rollins Museum of Art. It is a true honor and privilege to welcome all of you tonight, both on Zoom and those joining through Facebook. We are incredibly lucky to have this evening for the Thomas P. Johnson Distinguished Visiting Scholar Lecture, the wonderful artist and master storyteller, Trenton Doyle Hancock. So Trenton, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're really very grateful. For almost 2 decades, Trenton Doyle Hancock has been constructing his own fantastical narrative that continues to develop and inform his prolific and artistic output. Hi, Trenton. Nice to see you. I'm going to take just a minute to dig into your bio, but not nearly the mounds of the books that I could be going through, but just a few words to get us started. And maybe I'll start by saying that the Rollins Museum of Art has a work of yours in the collection, Undum Engel, Striped Goddess, Enchanced Soul, Slayer of Wolves from 2018. And that title alone really suggests really the intricacy of the marriage of language and image in your work, and the ways that brings so much to life, so much in our visual learning, but also so much around language. So we're very proud of that. It's a part of the Alfond collection of contemporary art. But just to return for a minute to make you blush, hopefully, we'll talk a little bit about your accolades. You know, part fictional, part autobiographical, you began this journey of being an artist when you were a very young man, and you'll talk a bit about that. Hancock's work pulls from his own personal experience, our historical canon, comics and superheroes, pulp fiction, and myriad pop culture references, resulting in a complex amalgamation of characters and plots, possessing universal concepts of light and dark, good and evil, and all of the gray in between. Your resume is extensive. As you know, there's a show of Trenton's up right now, actually in London at a gallery called the Hales Gallery. But in addition to that, he was featured most recently in exhibitions in November of 2020 at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston in a show called Unveiled Color Flash for Chat and Chew, Paris, Texas in '72. Where there was a monumental tapestry commission, which will remain on permanent display in the museum's new Kinder building. In 2019, there was a major exhibition of his work, Mind of the Mound, Critical Mass, which opened at Mass MoCA in North Adams, Massachusetts. In 2014, the retrospective Skin and Bones, 20 Years of Drawing at the Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston, traveled to the Akron Art Museum in Ohio, the Studio Museum of Harlem in New York, and the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art in Virginia. We could go on and on, but what I want to do is really let us listen to you and your words. But I thought one description from Valerie Castle Oliver that really has stuck with me in studying your work is the idea that you take drawing as a mother tongue, and that line for you is just such a native language. It's a way of expressing and communicating. And I'm sure for viewers who don't know your work as well as they might, after tonight, they'll understand just how richly that is true. But thank you so much. I will be fielding the questions this evening. So if you have questions and you're on Zoom, feel free to put them in the chat. We will look for them and I will pass them along at the end of Trenton's presentation. With that, I'm going to shut off my screen. Okay. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Abby. It's so nice to be here and able to speak with Rollins College and Museum, and yeah, I'm just honored that you all invited me. So I am going to, something always goes wrong because I am not a technical computer type person, but let me share my screen and then go into the keynote and do that. All right. Okay, I think we're on here. Well, I'm going to talk for an hour, a little bit over an hour probably. Have lots of images to show you. And what I'm going to try to do is take you first, talk about what inspired me to do what I do, talk about a few of the themes. And I am a character creator, a world builder. So I'm going to introduce you to some of the main key players in my work, and some of the themes in my practice. So here we go. We're going to start with Rojer Van Der Veeden. And I put this image up because as an undergraduate, I'm learning about art history. This image always stuck with me. And I grew up and my folks were missionaries and ministers, and so there was that Christian energy everywhere I looked. Coming from a small town of Paris, Texas, that going to church was such a huge deal for everyone. And I thought I'd kind of gotten away from it when I left home, but then I picked up my art history books, and there, Jesus was there again. He's like, he followed me. But anyway, I went over to Spain. I forget what year it was, in the mid 2000s, and I was finally able to see this piece in person. And I thought I would just, it would be a great selfie moment or something, something to smile when I thought back on it. But I ended up crying in front of the piece, and I didn't expect for it to have that type of a effect on me. But this painting, in person really showed me that there is this kind of perfect math that you can access. And the way these characters are packed into this space and this perfectly kind of triangular composition with energy kind of weaving throughout it and then going back up to the top and raining back down as tears, it struck me as a kind of a perfect art. And it reiterated to me that this is why I do what I do. I'm trying to get to that place. I'm trying to see things that other people made or touched that will make me feel that feeling again. Or I want to make something that makes me feel that feeling, or perhaps others. So there's this life affirming quality. And so that's just one piece. Let me see. Um, but also, I'm a student of pop culture, and film and fantasy and science fiction and horror are all at the very top of my list of inspirations. So to go from something that is so textbook classical to something like George Lucas's Star Wars, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. And you'll see that in my practice, that I don't create any kind of hierarchy between the high and the perceived low. Here's a young Trenton Doyle Hancock playing with his Mr. Music drum set. Toys mean so much to me, and they always have. Here I am again playing with my Alfie robot. These are, I have a huge toy collection. If you could see behind me, which I'm not going to move the camera or anything, but there's tons of toys everywhere in my workspace, in my house, and they provide inspiration. It's wonderful to be able to just wake up and then immediately see beautiful things. Um, well, I immediately see my wife. She's the most beautiful thing around me. But to have toys and all this other stuff, and she's a collector too. So we just have created this lifestyle where we make beautiful, crazy, colorful things, and we also collect them. So that is, it's just this I don't know, museum of beauty. Um, and Carolyn, this is my mother. And I made this for her when I was in elementary school. And she has it hanging up at her house at home in Paris, Texas. And this is, I put this in to show a kind of energy, like a character that I call Painter, and she's the spirit energy of color. And you will also see this kind of composition echoed in my work. So I tend to go back to um, the things I made as a child, and luckily I saved tons of my drawings from elementary school and some before that. And I often refer to them because that version of me only knew the truth and only made things that um, were like um, grounded in a kind of truth, because there was no corruption yet. So things like this picture, um, I'm always looking at and kind of wonder, like, who was that kid, and how do I get back to making things like that kid that are um, unfettered and not held back by any of the constraints of the day. And here's I say more recent, but this is from 1999, I believe. This is an image of Painter, the spirit energy, and you can see that kind of carrying over of that kind of composition and that energy. And you see it echoed in a work like this, which was a backdrop for a ballet. Back to another character, I think the strongest character in my household was this other competing version of the truth, which was the Bible. Um, Anytime I would think of a kind of logic, it was countered by a logic from this book. So I always saw this as this, third parental energy. But it also is my mother. Again, it's just another side of her. And there's a character named Lloyd that kind of comes out of this very kind of Old Testament judgmental mentality or way of looking at the world. And here is Lloyd shouting his words and impaling people with "You deserve less." I don't see the character as an evil energy. It's just the opposite side of the coin of the color. So you have the Painter character, and then you have this character named Lloyd. Also, when I was really young, around 10 years old, I created a character called Torpedo Boy. And Torpedo Boy is my alter ego. And I wasn't feeling very confident about myself. I had just started to wear glasses, and I was already pretty, bookish. But it pushed it over the top when I started wearing glasses, and kids were making fun of me relentlessly and uh, calling me professor or nerd or some things that I won't mention. So I had to find a way to balance things out. And of course, being a young artist, just learning of the power of the pen or the pencil, I went to the page and created this character, wrote stories around him, and he became a very archetypal, um, heroic kind of an outlet for me, where all the things that weren't going on correctly or right in my life, they could be corrected on the page. And so Torpedo Boy was that for me. Later on in life, in college, I revived Torpedo Boy, and he became uh, he took on a similar purpose of balancing, but this time it was more about how do I handle moving into adulthood, like, and all of the things that I was told that adults are supposed to do, but me realizing those aren't the things that I want to pursue. I don't want to waste my time with. And so Torpedo Boy in some ways helped me understand or make that transition into that space of adulthood. But it also allowed me to explore issues and ideas of what it means to be perfect. So growing up, telling, with your parents, and, one's a minister and another is, basically a missionary, and they're telling you, um, well, there's this one perfect character that you have to be like. Um, I thought, well, how does that weigh against everyone's special and perfect in their own way? Like there was competing ideas about what it means to be a good person, or and especially a heroic or perfect character. So this character Torpedo Boy became a very flawed individual because he indulged in the pleasures of the flesh and all those things that I was told that you cannot deal with if you want to be a noble or transcendent person. So Torpedo Boy is always with me. I don't know if you guys can see me, but yeah, always wearing the Torpedo Boy outfit when I'm near the studio. And then there's the character of the mound, which for me, the mound basically just means the earth. And uh, the mound is also this idea of your personal sensibilities, your intuitions, if you will, all of the things that make you up. So they get thrown into this heap. Ideas, materials, memories, all of that stuff becomes your own personal mound. And then to find the form of that mound, there were all kinds of characters that I grew up with in pop culture. Here on the screen is the all-knowing trash heap from Fraggle Rock. There was a Chicago show that was broadcast in Texas. So as a little kid, I was able to see this, what for Chicagoans was a local show called Giggle Snort Hotel. And the proprietor of the hotel was a human guy named Bill. I think that was his name, Bill. And he had a mound of clay that would wheel in onto the screen. And the mound would always be kind of groveling and sad. And then he would take like an actual carving tool and carve the clay and put these paper expressions into the mound's face. And I thought that was so fascinating that you could manipulate emotions through material that way. And so here he is fixing up the blob mound character, getting ready to go on a date. I forget with who, but he's putting a little bow tie on him. And so I created a character called the Mound, which again, in my created universe, which I had yet to name, ultimately it became the Mound verse more recently. But at the time, this piece was in 1997, 98. It was my undergrad thesis exhibition. Um, I built this mound costume and then fell asleep inside that costume. And so I slept through the whole opening. But the black and white was symbolic of me thinking about issues of blackness and whiteness. So it was sort of my first time really dealing with that. And the academic situation I was in was not equipped there were no classes or anything. So this was a lot of independent study. But what I did come out with was that I am equal parts those things. I love, I don't know, Sugar Hill Gang and the Police equally. And so it started me on this journey of trying to parse out, why does culture name some things as black and some things as white? And what does whiteness ultimately have to do with creating it, this, with naming blackness? And, it gets into some very complex issues of white supremacy and ownership and, um, uh, what does it mean to be American? So I was thinking a lot about those things at the time, but I didn't want to become a political artist. That wasn't my goal. but I wanted issues of politics to be embedded in my practice in a way that felt right for me. But I also just wanted to make images that I thought were interesting and strange and long lasting. So this was sort of the beginning of me really trying to explore that. But then going back to, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and all the mythology and stuff, I wanted to create also my own entry into the genre. So this character, the Mound, became the center of this universe that was broadening day by day with all kinds of characters that were um, either acting for or against this main character, which is the Mound, which is basically a helpless creature that is sitting in the middle of the forest, but is also a natural source of natural resource. So he's always being um, tested and um, mined for information and resources. And these characters that are the aggressors are called vegans. And this is an image that I remembered from my childhood from Fangoria magazine, uh, from a film called Life Force by Toby Hooper. And that this image always stuck with me. I remember seeing the magazine at the store, and this character was on the cover of it. And I guess it embedded itself in my psyche. And when I in grad school started drawing my evil vegan characters, um, I drew this. And it was only later that I, put the two together. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was just me channeling some horrible memory of me seeing this very scary image at a grocery store on a magazine stand. The more I drew these vegan characters, the more I stripped them of their humanity, and they became more like this, kind of goblin-like. Jim Henson's a huge inspiration for me, him and his Muppets, because he created this living painting with these colorful characters that were, some were quite explosive, others were very sweet. So he was able to access through mainly puppets, but also so many other materials and disciplines. He was able to create a wide range, a spectrum of emotions, um, and a really kind of full world with his Muppet characters. And I wanted to do the same thing. So here I am recreating this famous Jim Henson photo with my vegan characters. And there I am in the middle as this vegan who wanted to be a good vegan named Saint Sesame. He was a vegan priest. I was approached by Ballet Austin in 2004, I believe, and we embarked on a 4-year process of creating a ballet based on Saint Sesame and his cult of color. And that was a very exciting uh, process. And it taught me a lot about um, collaboration. It taught me a lot about sculpture and movement and sound and theater and all of these things that, I kind of had a little bit of knowledge about, but being kind of thrown into the middle of this uh, creative process with two amazing, genius creators, Stephen Mills and Graham Reynolds, who was the composer. It was such a great thing, and I'm yeah, happy to have been part of that. So here's the character Painter, who I introduced you to earlier. She's in a way comes and saves the day in the piece. And I designed all of the costumes, and part of it, me agreeing to work on a ballet, which I knew nothing about dance or ballet, was that I knew at the end of the process there would be these costumes, there would be this sculptural residue that would be out in the world, that I would, forever have access to, and would also help inform me as I wanted to also learn how to be a sculptor and how to trust sculptural um, things. As a painter, it's like I go to the canvas and it's a window and I go into it, but to have objects that are invading your space, sculptural things, it made sense to work on this piece. So from there, I took on more commission projects, and this was in Seattle at Olympic Sculpture Park, and this was a large metal hand that was jutting out from one of the walls, and there's kind of colorful skittle-like rain falling down, and this felt site specific in the sense that it was specifically for Seattle, and this idea of the um, the rain and the gray atmosphere. This was to lighten the mood and for people to come and interact with the piece by bringing plastic tops or unrecyclable material and putting them in the appropriate plastic colored bins. So it was this interactive work called a Better Promise is what the name of it was. And so switching gears, about sometime around 2009, I started to really think a little bit more about um, what was next in the practice after the ballet, which ended in a war where there was a battlefield just strewn with the bodies of these vegans who didn't make it. Like their colorful revolution was thwarted, and then what was left was just kind of darkness, and the color was draining out of it all. Right around that time, my stepfather passed away, and there was some other sort of, not so great things going on in my life. So I really was thinking a lot about mortality at that time, a lot about just what it means to be human and the limitations of the flesh and of the body, and also the horror of what might be beyond all of this. It could be all great things like they were saying, but it also just could be either nothingness or something quite scary. And I just jumped head first into this space of trying to deal with that. And I guess when I look back on it, I created this character, and it seems as though I cocooned myself. So to go from this mound creature to this humanoid character who basically was me wrapped in the mound's fur. So the black and white has now taken me over. This is a piece called "And Then It All Came Back to Me," meaning it all comes back to the self. And for a little bit, I just worked on self portraits that where I used myself as a pincushion almost to just see how far I could stretch myself before my body just ripped apart. And this character, in some ways, was the overseer of this 2 year body of work. Um, and then I worked with a filmmaker to create what the Bring Back brought, which was um, the process of me turning into this being, what I call the Bring Back. And it was a 6-minute piece. And ultimately, I realized, oh, what this character wants to do is bring back things from the past. Like I've been cocooned forcefully into this body of sorts. And the whole purpose of this character is to mine my memory, or mine our memory collectively, and bring back all of this stuff. And so I focused on toys and toy design. So this character is like, okay, I remember these two toys. I will mash them together and create a new toy. And here we go. And so then that springboarded into this whole way of my studio morphing into like a Santa's workshop. And I started to think about all of the amazing toy companies that I loved as a kid, and um, continued to love as an adult. And one thing that was a through thread through all of these toy companies was their logos were awesome. So they all had really great logos that would catch you um, as you walked down the toy aisle, um, and also project an idea of quality. So there's a kind of branding like in the word Mattel, but also in this particular design that bespeaks something, the nature of the company and the quality of the product. And I thought that was a very exciting thing. But maybe these bring back characters, that's what they do. They um, help generate these quality memories and then put them out in the world. So then I created TDH Properties, my own logo for my own endeavors. Going back, looking at how perfect the font and type design is for Star Wars and many others. I wanted to have also another mind of the mound, which spoke more about my ideas and perhaps less about the products. So there's basically now two logos that I work with, TDH Properties and Mind of the Mound. I worked with uh, a designer, and we came up with this a catalog basically, and I painted the cover of it. It's a Time magazine inverted, and it became emit because these characters are emitting all of this kind of beautiful, colorful energy and strange energy. And this was a show at the Ringling Museum in Sarasota in 2015. But it was also the debut of that film, and I showed a lot of the props and things that were used to make up the film, including tons of toy designs that I was able to realize, partly with Graphic Studio in Tampa, Florida. Yeah, this idea of me becoming a kind of Santa Claus bearing toy gifts was very exciting. And so that gave way to a whole body of work called Becoming the Toy Maker. And there's mm, around 60 pieces in that series. I'll just go through a few of them. This is called Skullduggery. I won't name all the titles, but if one strikes me, I'll throw a title in there. Uh, I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. Head Tread, The Letting. So you'll see that there's a lot of images that point back to a kind of ritual behavior, characters hoovering over something with the glow and um, uh, things being cut into and other things emerging and birthing from other things. And, it's all quite kind of eyes wide shut, real, like ritualistic kind of stuff. But it's the way I grew up. I kind of see, you know, that I was in kind of a Christian cult in a way, and there was all kinds of stuff I saw that was, when I look back on it, a special way to grow up, but also really, really strange. And I'm happy I'm an artist because I can totally go back and mine all of that behavior and all that stuff I saw and heard and translated into something that I find to be, meaningful and generative. As you now enliven a test, set an evil new on USA. The gray remains of a friendship scarred. Oh, well, I'm getting the pinwheel of death here. Let's see. Maybe it'll stop in a second. Okay. Am I still?
Trenton, we're still not seeing your screen.
Oh, you're not seeing. Okay.
Yeah,
Let
thank
me.
you for sharing it again.
Okay. Is it being shared now?
Nope,
Nope.
at least not for me.
Okay. I'm going to have to.
While you're looking for that, I was going to suggest if anyone has questions that they want to add to the chat or share, feel free to do that so we can collect them for the end of the call. Now we can see the screen, Trenton. That's great.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. It just froze up for some reason.
No apologies necessary.
Okay. Okay. Back at it. So I'm just going to whiz through. There's certain toys from my childhood called busy boxes that I always found super exciting, and rightfully so. That's what they're supposed to do for children. These are built specifically to strengthen hand-eye coordination by having these little pockets of games and tests in pretty much every square inch of this board is something that is supposed to engage you. So I started to think about some of these paintings from this series as busy boxes, and I just love the various designs of them. And so in my studio, I have all of these kind of end up looking like plastic knobs that you can grab and turn, but they're just plastic tops that I've collected from the trash, or I saved them. But it's something I've done ever since I was 2 or 3 years old. I've collected these plastic tops, so it makes sense for me now to be able to put them into paintings. And here's a piece called Once a Man, Twice a Child, Busy Box. And this is the bring back character, but drawn in the style of the old He-Man, Masters of the Universe illustrations. And this is a illustration I did for a Mound toy design, which was actually realized as a toy. Um, and here's Torpedo Boy and a vegan action figure. So I went all out during this time period, and all of this was leading up to um, a large show, which I'll get into in just a second. Here's Baby Comeback, which was a toy from Mattel in the 70s. And this was a jumping off point to create the Moundverse Infants. And this was me taking 4 of my characters that were grown-ups, but kind of shrinking them down to baby size and making a line of baby dolls out of them. So I worked with my alma mater, Tyler School of Art, and we collaborated to make these, which were all factory produced in China, and and we had a big show of them at the end of it, and it was about a 3-year process to create them. I was influenced heavily by the Garbage Pail Kids, which were a satirical line of cards from the mid 80s, which were making fun of Cabbage Patch Kids, which were at the time were promoted as the most wholesome doll you could ever buy. So luckily, Art Spiegelman and a few of his um, uh, contemporaries created the Garbage Pail Kids as a spoof, and I was the perfect guinea pig for these cards, which to me were so fascinating. They were so beautifully painted. It was in some ways my first time really paying attention to how something was constructed or painted, was like seeing these cards. And also the idea that every last one of them was some kind of double entendre or a had double meaning. So it was always a puzzle or a game to figure out what the card meant or what part of pop culture that the names were referencing. You know, obviously there were a lot of ideas that, you know, a 9 or 10-year-old wasn't going to be able to grasp, or maybe shouldn't even be dealing with yet. But these cards were kind of a kickstart into the good and bad of culture, because they were so varied and so diverse. There were hundreds of these. And when I look back, I go, I mean, what an undertaking for an illustrator or a team of illustrators to weekly have to come up with these ideas and get them out. So then I started creating my own as business cards. As a kid, I wasn't able to go trick or treating because my folks, namely my mom and my grandmother, thought it was, I don't know, the devil's birthday or something. So we couldn't do that as kids. Um, I, I only got to go once, and I went as Jaws, who was my favorite character at the time. I was invited by Virginia Commonwealth University's campus in Qatar, where they have an amazing print facility, to come over and do a printmaking project with them. So I decided that I wanted to, instead of just doing a straightforward etching project or a silkscreen project, which I had done many of those in the past, I wanted to do something different. They had a vacuum form machine. Uh, so I was like, well, why don't we make Halloween masks? And that turned into making whole Halloween costumes. So I chose three of my characters, and we created vinyl outfits and vacuum form plastic masks. We designed boxes, and they looked exactly like something that you would have gotten in the store in the 70s or 80s. And here I am working on, you know, the designs, which brings me to being invited to work at Mass Mocha in 2015. I was invited over, and we opened our show in 2019, and I was given the large football-sized space to work with. So basically, all the projects that I had been working on almost in secret for about 8 years were able to be brought together. Um, for instance, the toy project, the Halloween costume project, the various films and animations I had been working on, all of those things could come together under one roof. And we were able to recreate my grandmother's house, where there's a giant hand coming out of the door holding a crucifix, repelling all of these evil trick-or-treaters. And when you go around the house and look from the back, you see that it's a cutaway of my grandmother's den area. And playing on the television, looping, is an actual broadcast from the mid 80s that my mother and grandmother saw, that is basically demonizing all the toys from the 80s. So all the way from Barbie and Rainbow Bright to He-Man and Masters of the Universe and Transformers, saying that it was all basically rooted in magic and witchcraft and bad ideas. And it actually affected my mother, and she took all of my He-Man toys and burned them behind the house. And that was a kind of trauma that I've carried with me, and it's probably why I'm the artist that I am, and also why I'm a major toy collector, probably one of the biggest in the South. But there were what I call stations, where you walk on this kind of Candyland board game, and then you'll end up in different mounds, and you can go inside of them and have experiences. So I wanted the outside of each one of these things to be engaging, but I also wanted the inside of them. So you walk inside this mound, and his ribs are basically toy shelves. And so I was able to put lots of my collection on these shelves, and people could come in and just experience it as a museum. And there's all kinds of game pieces that are um, kind of peppered throughout the space as you yourself like follow this game. And I worked with Cinnabar Fabrications in Los Angeles to create this mound structure. And the drapery that goes around it, so the black and white rug fur part, was created in Miami with Odebashian Rug Company. And so here's the finished piece. And when you go inside of it, there's an animation playing. So it's about a 5-minute animation. So I'm going to play it now.
Oh boy, here we go. Walking through the woods. Here we are. Oh my God. I've been walking forever, it seems. Good grief. Oh, what's that up there? Got something ahead. Jeez. I'm almost there. Okay. Oh my God. Here we are. Oh, yellow, blue, green, red. Yellow, blue, green, and red. Yellow, blue, green, red. Okay, here's the yellow. Let me get some of this. Oh, that looks great. Let's get this here in the bucket. There it is. Just shake it off. Just shake it off right there. Good. Okay. Oh my God, look at that green. Get that, that's beautiful green. Okay, we'll squeeze. Ah, good. Pick it up. Pick it up. Yeah, in the bucket. Oh, this feels great. Oh, wonderful. You're such a wonderful creature. Amazing, amazing. Really great. I really like it. Oh, boy, I gotta walk all the way back. It's so far. I can't believe this.
So that was that. And this is continuing back with the show. So when you exit that mound, you're confronted by this character named Undum Angel. And she's the soul of a mound that happened to grow up and become a great goddess. And she is able to wield color. But she's still, even though she looks like an adult, she's still uh, trying to figure out what her purpose is, what these powers that she's been given are all about. And in some ways, she's still just a child trying to figure her way through the world. And she's a character that I've been mostly dealing with like lately. I'm very excited about developing her character and figuring out where she goes from here. Um, this is a large comic book panel. I embarked on a comic book project in 2017, and this is a large blow up of one of the colored panels that in this book is going to break down everything about the Moundverse, uh, all of the characters, and show how they're all interrelated. This was an aspect of the show where it was just a lot of those toy maker paintings lined up where you can see them all together. Another one of those game pieces, and this is the Lloyd character. So, and this was a pocket of the show where it recreates a scene from the film where the bringback is sitting behind his desk with all the toys behind him. And here's an overview, just kind of looking down from the second floor over that whole space so you can really see the layout where these large structures now look like toys. And I'll just kind of run through some of the pages of this comic, the Moundverse. And it's frozen again. Okay. I can't even find my cursor. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'll just walk through some of these pages. And here I am inviting you into the mound, and we're going to go on a journey in the biology of this creature and talk about how his mound meat or his blood and viscera are always in flux, and they create energy that way by moving and bumping up against one another, and that's how mounds create color. And they can't talk; they only speak in projections of color. Yeah. And here's a mound that's about to try and defend himself by creating a force field where this kind of big cat is attacking him. He can create a force field of color to protect himself. And then I invite you into the studio and show you that Well, mounds aren't just these fantastical creatures that live in the forest. Mounds are also how I organize information. So you see mounds of paintings, mounds of materials, and used paint tubes and pencils. It's just a system of organization. And I feel as if we all have our own system of organization that we must trust, and it should be valued. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And then it moves into a part of the book where it talks about mounds as the collective unconscious, or this lattice work that connects us all. So we all share memories, and we throw them every day, all of our memories and experiences, into what I'm calling the memory mound. And here are just some images of figures doing various things. This is a piece called The Everlasting Arms. And this is kind of going back to me dealing with my stepfather passing away. These hands, like he was a carpenter as well. And I remembered how strong his hands were. But here we have this almost like a family crest that's been created by these crossed arms. Here's another figurative piece called The Former and the Latter. This is a piece kind of talking about the nature of the devil. He's disingenuous and he's friends with us. With the money I have left, all I can do is buy myself some extra time. This is a piece called Waiting. A new creature, I don't pretend to love you. I know just how you feel. The referee. And this is another, large work. Just dealing with all of these characters and what happens when they all get together in these kind of meetings. And some of these paintings are quite large. This one is, I think it's 7.5 feet by 9 feet. Split per tonality. Another, pretty large work. This is Mr. Mouth version 2. When they found me, I wasn't there. Version 2. Concerto. Coloration Coronation. And here's my grandmother. She passed away last year at the age of 99. And this is some of her great grandchildren. I think there's you can barely make out my brother in the mirror behind there. But anyway, she was the matriarch of the family, and everything centered around her in the way that I speak about the Mound character and all of these characters of consequence that orbit around this one character. Well, my grandmother was like that. And but she birthed, three girls, and they birthed all of us and all of these other children, and it continues to go on. But I wanted to create a character that somehow highlighted how beautiful I feel like the women in my family are, whether it be my grandmother, my mother, my aunts, my cousins, nieces, and all the various paths that they're going to take in their journeys. And that's where the Undum Angel character comes in, who I introduced to you earlier. So I'll just kind of go through some of the images that I've created in the past 6 or 7 years based on the Undum Angel character, who becomes this warrior goddess. out of necessity. With each piece that I make, I want them to be different. So as you can see, I jump from medium to medium, um, scale to scale, and it really is. I want to throw everything into the work and have it be quite diverse and varied. Because yeah, on some level, I just don't want to get bored with it. So I'm always looking for new ways to express the id or the energy within a character or a group of characters. And this is a piece I did when I was 19 years old, um, called Properties of the Hammer. And it was just a photo assignment. We could do anything, like a self-portrait assignment. But I fashioned this noose and covered myself with this cloth and held a hammer. And that was my entry into this assignment. And I think it was me in some ways channeling some of the like not as good energy, some of the racist energy from Paris, Texas growing up. And it ended up in this self-portrait. So I was dealing with ideas about white supremacy and the Klan well before I knew who Philip Guston even was. But when I learned about him, I felt there was a kindred spirit, this Jewish painter who was trying to deal with the complexities of what it means to um, understand ideas of whiteness, but also um, kind of take the steam out of and make buffoons out of these characters. So a few years ago, I decided that my character Torpedo Boy should meet up with Philip Guston's Klansman, since I see him as my art grandfather. It's like, well, these two should meet up. So I made a cartoon called Step and Screw, where these Klansmen call Torpedo Boy to their house, and they need him to come into this dark house to do something. And in the dark, they tell him, you need to step up on the stool in front of you and change this light bulb. And they're handing it to him. So he steps up, screws it in, and when the lights come on, he sees he's surrounded by all of these Klansmen. So what was kind of a gag strip that was lighthearted in some ways ended in, a relatively tense and fraught with tension and traumatic kind of a way. But also with this body of work, I was able to do a lot of research into the actual lynching history of my hometown of Paris, Texas. And all of that was displayed together. So you have this lighthearted information and then this frieze of information that's really about talking about this buried history. So here's just, various installations of this body of work. And that gave way to paintings that furthered the comic, where now Torpedo Boy is putting on his armor, which is a football uniform, and is trying to deal with this Klan character who ends up being like filled on the inside with vegans, and they're trying to make their way out. And so you get a sense of the scale of these works. I'll talk for about maybe 8 more minutes, maybe 10. Let's see. And here's just another, one from that series of Torpedo Boy. And he has these cleats that he uses to kind of stomp these vegans out once they spill out from underneath the Klan outfit. But also the Step and Screw comic, I used the armature of that scene where the Klansman is handing over the light bulb. I thought it would be interesting to see just how many things that Klansman tries to hand over to Torpedo Boy. And there, there's this dialogue between these two characters. And I generally carve that dialogue right out of their outfits. So you can see this back and forth with them that's, on their clothing. Just, I think, another way for me to try and merge together the form of comics and painting. And this is a show at James Cohan Gallery from last fall, called Something American. This is Becoming the Toy Maker 4 of 41, Stove. This is Let by Wilford Be Done. This is, let's see, what's the name of this one? Becoming the Toy Maker, Phase 11 of 41, Attack Me with Her Lovely Strange Candy. This is Completely Fugging Rabid. It's just a matter of trust at this point. And there's two large paintings here from what I call the Bring Back Condiment series. And this is a bunch of bringbacks have gotten together. And I thought, well, since it's red, this will be the condiment ketchup. And here you can kind of get a sense of the materiality. There's all this fake fur that's glued into where the stripes are. And you can see tons of plastic tops that have also been glued to the surface. And this is Bring Back Condiments, mayo, mustard, and special sauce. And I'm going to just run through chapter 2 of the comic about veganism, where I run out of the house with my briefcase, but I'm confronted with a bunch of vegans and end up having to turn into Torpedo Boy. But there's so many of them that I just, Torpedo Boy has to run away from them. And then he ends up eating all the meat out of a meat truck in an alleyway. And he turns into Torpedo Boy's meat form, where he just goes berserk. And there's some of the comics shown also at James Cohan in New York. And the last bits here are from my current show at Hales Gallery in London. So there's a large vertical piece called Lineup, featuring Torpedo Boy and TDH properties. And this is a piece called I Didn't Even Get to Say Goodbye. Water, Ground, Hell, Sky, which is also the name of the show. Here's mound number 5, and it's color transmissions. Scum paste. Scum drum. And this is Our Present Reeks of Our Past. Delightful little self-portrait. Torpedo Boy in warrior mode. And this is Step and Screw, a money wire with a crier and a liar. So I've been taking the Step and Screw format, but placing other characters in the place of the Klansman. So in this one, I have a Jesus character. So we've actually come full circle. We started with Rojer Van Der Veeden, and we're ending with Jesus. So there you go. I'm going to stop screen sharing now.
Thank you so much, Trenton. That was incredibly generous. I feel like I learned so much.
Oh, thank
And
you.
very, there's so much nuance and so much layering, both obviously physically, but also metaphorically. Anna Heller is also on the screen, the director of the Rollins Museum of Art. And so we thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna share a couple questions if you don't mind taking them. One of the questions comes from the museum's curator, Gisela Carbonell. She wanted to know, which medium do you feel best embodies your creative vision at this point in your career? Are there other media you would like to explore that you haven't had a chance yet? What would be on the top of your wish list?
Well, I consider myself a drawer, so I always go back to drawing, and I feel like everything I do, no matter what media it's in, it is still based in drawing. So that's where I start. So that, I think that's what best, if it's the most modest way of making something. Find something and make a mark, and you can probably find a mark that is suitable and that makes you feel like you're actually getting work done. I really ultimately, I've said this before in the past, but I see my whole project as a film project, even though I'm, primarily a painter. I see it as one big movie, and doing things like this is just like showing behind the scenes of a movie. And yes, I've done a few actual film projects, but I see the larger arc of what I'm doing as this kind of a film project. So I think ultimately I would love to see what that would really look like to do a feature-length film one day. But yeah, I feel like I'm still building towards it, especially with the comic book. I almost see that as storyboarding out this much what could ultimately be really daunting and too complicated to even think about. That if I can see that through as a storyline in a comic or a graphic novel, then I have a more of a fighting chance, perhaps, of pitching that to someone that I could collaborate with and do something like that.
Yeah. I could definitely imagine it as your stories and your narratives as a film. And it leads actually to a question that we received around the question, or around the idea of about the future of the narrative. Do you have a clear sense of the continuing arc of the story for Torpedo Boy and the other central characters of consequence, or are they unfolding in time for you?
They're certainly unfolding in time, and characters that I thought were the main characters, sometimes, halfway through a body of work, I'll realize, oh, they were just a side character, and here's the real, protagonist over here. So I think I like being surprised just as much as anyone else. And if it wasn't surprising to me, if I had all the answers, it wouldn't really be worth doing. So I think it's always this, very exciting kind of magical thing to be surprised by your own process, or your own characters that you've created.
1000%. I have another question for you, but I want to remind you listeners, if you have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat or to post them on Facebook and we will grab them. Another question that we received, Trenton, is around this idea of scale, because you work both with such moments of intimacy, as you talk about that line, that kind of perfect relationship, an intimate relationship, but then you go to these super monumental works. And do you feel like many artists don't have the facility to do things at all ranges of the spectrum? Do you have to kind of shift your mindset to approach working on something monumental from working on something more intimate, or are they all a part of the studio as an ongoing practice, as the ongoing practice?
It definitely is a switch in mentality, because something that is just can be done with a flick of the wrist or something, is so different than something you have to throw your whole body into.
Mhm.
So, it might be the difference of, well, I just need a nice glass of water next to my workstation where I'm going to be sitting for 8 to 10 hours, or I need to exercise like intensely 2 days before because I know the thing I'm going to be doing is very demanding, you know. But that's just sort of, two ways to think about how the physical and perhaps the psychology of the studio have to work like a machine for you to
Mhm.
be able to, kind of do that um, back and forth. But then there's things that are more like a long game where it's about writing. It's about reading and writing, and not necessarily about drawing yet. Like the drawing doesn't
Mhm.
even take place a year, maybe a year later. After you're reading. So there's that kind of stuff too, where you make these plans to do things, and they're rooted in a kind of more academic or um, fashion. So yeah, I have all of those things going at once, and it is this, okay, what am I going to do, what am I doing now, and then you have to prepare yourself to get into this other headspace. um, but again, I feel like writing and drawing are the foundations for all of those things. So it's, yeah, going back to my sketchbooks or my journals and kind of figuring out what the plan is.
Definitely. We have one comment and then we'll take two more questions. The comment comes from BJ Paulhouse, who said, I loved watching that animation. Thanks for sharing it. And I think that was true for all of us. It was really insightful.
Mm.
Another question that came up is around, how your sensibility as a collector impacts your identity as an artist. And if you could expand a little bit more on perhaps those intersections.
Sure. Well, I feel like having objects or things or bits of illustrations and illustration history or other painters' work or other artists' work around me, whether that be design or painting or whatever, is it's a kind of stimulation that works for me. I know it would be probably perhaps too much for some people, but the way I collect things is they're around me, and my brain is putting together a collage of all of that stuff at all times. And
Mhm.
how that's going to emerge through my hand, like it goes in my eye, goes into
Mhm.
this sort of tumbler in the back and storage unit, and then is, propelled forward sometimes without you even knowing it. And kind of like how I was saying, the that one kind of horrific image from Fangoria magazine of this emaciated character. It took, I don't know, 20 years for it to come back out.
Mhm.
But things go in and they stay there for a while, and you, in some ways, have no idea of what that recall is going to be like or when it's going to happen. And I feel like that's exciting, and that's one of the reasons I collect. And it's not just physical objecthood, but folders upon folders online. Like the internet is both such a blessing and a huge curse for a person like me who
Yeah,
wants to have everything in their possession. So
totally.
as a collector, I'm definitely would be under the category of a completist. Yeah, I want it all, but whether I use it all, that's another. Yeah, that's
I
another.
certainly understand that sensibility. Dr. Heller is going to ask our last question tonight.
Hi, thank you so
Hi.
much. And first of all, let me just thank you for all of us. It's great to meet you even through the screen, and thank you for allowing us to look into your fascinating world. I should say worlds, probably. I understood a lot more about your work by hearing how personal, what personal ties every character has to your own life and experience. And my question was, considering that so much of your practice is fully dedicated to lowering the barriers or, between high and low, right? And sort of merging them. Do you feel do you relate differently, say, to your works that end up on the walls of museums versus the works that get, made into toys and mass manufactured? From what you've said, my guess would be probably not, but I'd like to hear what you think about that. And then the other thing, just a comment, which is what you said about seeing your entire project, your entire practice as a film. That really clinched it for me. It makes so much sense because the power of sort of multiplying narratives is so evident in what you do, and the building of one on top of the other. So I want to see that movie for sure. and also as an art historian, I'm fully fascinated with the way you relate to other artists and to the history of art. I studied medieval and Renaissance, and the fact that you started with Van Der Veeden, you just had me at hello pretty much with that one, because it's, and I would have never put that next to one of your works as a direct inspiration, which clearly it's not. But anyway, let me get back to the question. So was that high and low relationship?
So yeah, I feel like with the high and low thing, I'm sort of in this, how can I put it, transitional generation of, like, I don't think kids now that are in art school think in the same way that even I did, and especially, characters like, I don't know if you guys know Gary Panter, or these illustrators that, came out of art school perhaps in the 60s and 70s and were working in the 80s. They still had this very clear division between their painted work, that they showed in galleries, and then the stuff that they're going to pitch to the New York Times as a cartoon, or for a magazine. And they definitely were, I noticed, and I'm friends with all these guys, so it's like I still see this division in the way they think about it. And then in the 90s, when I was in art school, that started we started to see it as an okay thing. It's like, well, we're painters, but we're going to start to pull in all of this stuff from video games, toys, comics, and animation, get that into the paintings unapologetically. So it became this kind of new version. Pop surrealism is what people called it back then, but it was still this very kind of provincial kind of a moment within art history there. And then it started to disperse in the same way hip hop has dispersed. And it's like you can listen to a country music song and it has a hip hop beat to it. Like there's not, the purity of things is kind of gone. So I think that also the purity of what was high and what was low has also been eroded, because you get someone like Journer Gallery. Like I remember when they had I think it was the Masters of comic books, or I forget what it was called exactly, but that was a landmark show in kind of I guess giving permission for people that were on one side of that fence, the permission to look at the artistry and value graphic design and graphic arts in a way. And I feel like that's happened with ceramics. It's happened with so many other quote unquote craft forms that have now been embraced. And I think I was always of the mind that, of course, it's all visual, expression. It's all the same, but it kind of takes some of these institutions who have a certain stake in the value of things as gatekeepers. A little bit. There's a lag time, to get that everything kind of flattened out and evened out in that way. So I kind of see what I'm doing now is no different than what I was doing in the 90s in terms of how I dealt with what was high and what was low. And it definitely has no bearing on how I collect things. It's like I have, Piranesi prints that I bought next to, a comic book illustrator's work that was made last year. So it's like, and I'm able to look at them both in the same field of vision. And I'm trying to think, what was the last part of your question?
it was really a comment about your relationship to art history and
The art history, right,
what
right, right.
inspired you and what you dialogue with. I mean, we happen to have a Philip Guston in the gallery right now, and it just that comparison and that whole body of work that dialogues with him, I think is so interesting, especially today. In view of everything that's happening, and even directly related to the whole controversy with the Philip Guston exhibition, that was postponed. But I think it's interesting because people are thinking about that again in new ways, and I think your work contributes to that new thinking.
Hmm. Well, yeah, his work in particular, I was introduced to it when I was an undergraduate. I was taking a printmaking course, and my print professor, who had met Guston a few times, saw that I was doing this Klansman work in some of my prints, and was like, "Well, you need to look at this artist." And my mind was blown. I was like, "Wow, what is this?" And well, why is he making this stuff? And I was just fascinated by it, and now when I look at his work, it still feels like the first time. Like I still have that excitement. Like every time I go to a painting, I'm like, what does it take for someone to get there? Like, how do you get there? Like that's really something. Um, his work is interesting in the sense that you for years, for 50 plus years, people have been able to have this pretty rich conversation about his practice without ever talking about issues of white supremacy. It's like not even talking about the elephant in the room that's actually a part of the work. Because I feel like a lot of cultural institutions, although they can value painting and the material of painting, and perhaps even how Guston went from being an abstractionist to, working with imagery, is fascinating. And you can write books just on that. This other large part, which is so connected to um, uh, maybe the infantile place that the country is in terms of talking about the construction of whiteness and what that has to do with anything, was exactly what he was talking about. And specifically for him, about Jewishness and whiteness, which is even more complex and, to a thing to talk about and to pinpoint. So I think it's great. It had to go through a little rough period, in the past few years in order, the world kind of had to start burning down for people to have the conversation. But yes, we are at the point of transparency and inclusion in terms of that dialogue, and I think that's great. And I am happy to chime in whenever I can about what I feel like that is, because just on a personal, uh, perhaps selfish level, yeah, I want to see those works in that traveling show just as much as everyone else. As a painter, I just want to be surrounded by them. So while I have patience and I'm ready, but I'm also like, man, we need some new voices to really frame this and talk about these things, because it's the perfect opportunity right now to do it.
You contributed to the catalog on the exhibition and contributed to Art Forum with those reflections and advocacy for the work, despite its complexity. And, that's just one of the many other hats you wear, in addition to being an artist and a storyteller, but also a thought leader and admired by so many. We can't thank you enough for your contribution tonight, Trenton, for your time, which is everyone's most precious asset. That you would give us an hour and a half is just extraordinary. So with deep gratitude, we thank you. We thank our viewers tonight. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully sometime in person. But all the best, and thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.